A little lazy eye. What's the only thing that's distinctive about him? That he has no birthmarks.
Light skin.
Beautiful, healthy baby boy. 7-month-old baby boy.
Startling and heartbreaking. 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro disappeared from a Yucaipa shopping center parking lot, and the more investigators dig, the less the story looks like a simple stranger abduction. If you follow this channel for real investigative reporting, hit subscribe now and turn on the bell so you get first-hand updates as evidence and interviews emerge. At about 7:30 p.m. on August 14th, a mother says she was preparing to change her infant's diaper in the Big Five sporting goods parking lot when she was struck from behind and lost consciousness. When she came to, her son was gone. That emergency call set off a frantic response. Deputies, K-9 teams, helicopters scanning from above, and community volunteers combing surrounding streets and greenbelts. Yet in the immediate hours and the days that followed, the basic facts remained maddeningly thin. There was no corroborated eyewitness account of an abductor leaving with a child, no vehicle seen speeding away, and no obvious physical trace that would point to a quick getaway. Authorities publicly acknowledged they could not rule out foul play, and as more evidence, including surveillance footage and witness accounts, came in, the investigation widened. Why does that matter? Stranger abductions in public usually leave traces. Someone sees a person carrying a child, a car speeds away, or an item is dropped in haste. This case produced none of those breadcrumbs. Instead, the narrative shifted. A desperate plea for return, a large volunteer response, and then scrutiny as inconsistencies in the parents' accounts came to light. The loss of an infant naturally triggers intense community emotion and media attention, but it also invites scrutiny. When elements of a story don't line up, investigators widen their lens and follow every possible lead. For people on the ground, the human images make it worse. A crib still made, a toy left where someone last touched it, routines shattered. Those images have driven volunteers to continue searching and kept social feeds active, but investigators must separate hope from evidence. At this point, the evidence raises as many questions as it answers. If you have any information from that evening, dashcam footage, store camera clips, or anything suspicious you noticed, contact the authorities. One piece of overlooked information can turn a cold case into a solved one. Initial public sympathy was immediate for the mother, who called 911. Her on-camera pleas were raw and human. But investigators say the details she offered to reporters and detectives did not remain constant when compared with evidence and follow-up interviews. Law enforcement noted inconsistencies in her statements, and when detectives confronted those discrepancies, she chose not to continue cooperating. That withdrawal is consequential because missing person investigations move fastest and most effectively when parents and caregivers are partners with police. What do investigators mean by inconsistent? In reporting and in police briefings, descriptions changed. Where an attacker approached from, how long she was unconscious, whether she saw a vehicle, and other seemingly basic facts were not stable across interviews and media appearances. Emergency responders who treated the mother reported she appeared oriented and responsive, details that did not always match more dramatic public statements. Those differences prompted detectives to re-examine statements and seek surveillance to corroborate or contradict what she said. Outsiders read such changes as potential signs of fabrication, while others cautioned that trauma can produce confused and fragmentary recall. Both perspectives matter. Trauma can degrade memory, but deliberate changes in key elements can indicate deception or an attempt to misdirect. The moment a primary witness, and the primary person who reported the crime, stops cooperating, investigators must pivot. Detectives described serving search warrants, collecting devices, and obtaining a large volume of surveillance footage from locations of interest. That work is labor-intensive and delicate. It requires exhaustive evidence collection and careful handling of the family's other children and welfare concerns. From a law enforcement standpoint, non-cooperation doesn't prove guilt, but it does remove an important path to rapidly check claims and recover leads. The investigation must therefore rely more on physical evidence and third-party data, surveillance, witness statements, and digital forensics, than on the narrative offered by the person who made the 911 call. It is also important to be mindful about interpreting behavior under stress. Silence, fear, and the choice to seek legal counsel are consistent with real victims who are terrified of talking. They are also consistent with individuals who may be coached, controlled, or concealing involvement. Investigators and clinicians are trained to separate memory artifacts of trauma from deliberate misdirection, but that process takes time. For the community, though, the visible effect of a parent who first begs for help and then goes quiet is disorienting and fuels immediate suspicion, a dynamic that has been visible in public reaction and in the withdrawal of support from some outside organizations. One of the clearest, most consequential facts to emerge is that the child's father, identified publicly as Jake Haro, has a documented criminal record including a conviction for willful cruelty to a child and additional legal encounters. Those records are deeply relevant. They change how investigators think about motive, risk to children in that household, and patterns of behavior. When a parent of a missing infant has prior convictions for child cruelty, authorities cannot treat that person the same as an unrelated bystander. That history becomes a central fact to be checked against current evidence. Why does a prior conviction matter in a missing child probe? First, it establishes legally recognized past harm. Patterns of harm are important to detectives building timelines. Second, it affects how outside organizations and volunteers approach the family. Some child safety groups withdrew assistance after learning about the record, which illustrates the practical impact such records have on community trust and search operations. Third, it changes investigative priorities. Authorities are more likely to search the family home, seize vehicles for forensic analysis, subpoena electronic records, and take steps to ensure the safety of other children in the home. These actions are not accusatory by themselves. They are routine investigative measures when a vulnerable child goes missing and pre-existing red flags exist. The presence of a criminal past also complicates public conversation. Prior convictions are sometimes raised too early by commentators and used to condemn someone in the court of public opinion. Responsible coverage requires nuance. A past conviction does not automatically prove involvement in a new incident, but it is a weighty factor that must be examined. For families, neighbors, and investigators, it means the focus must include a thorough inquiry into what happened inside the home and in the hours before the disappearance. Detectives will seek to establish whether past conduct has any link to Emmanuel's disappearance or whether it is context that must be acknowledged while evidence is developed. Following the initial report and the discovery of inconsistencies, investigators executed search warrants at the Haro home and seized at least one vehicle belonging to the father for forensic examination. 9 teams were deployed in and around the home as well as in the parking lot where the disappearance was reported. In many jurisdictions, seizing a family vehicle is a standard investigative step when questions arise about a disappearance reported near the family. Forensic technicians can search for DNA, trace evidence, blood, fiber transfers, and other material that either corroborates or disproves accounts. That seizure and the related search warrants indicate detectives are taking a methodical, evidence-first approach rather than relying solely on testimonial accounts. The addition of cadaver dogs and expanded search radii into fields and canyon areas reflects investigators' duty to consider the worst-case scenario. When cadaver detection teams are called in, authorities are not presumptively declaring a body has been found. They're doing everything possible to either rule that out or find evidence of a crime. Searches covered nearby fields, drainage ditches, and areas where someone might try to conceal a child or evidence. At the same time, detectives obtained a large amount of surveillance footage from businesses and public cameras near the parking lot and in adjacent neighborhoods. Those clips are being pieced together to reconstruct movements in and out of the area and to confirm or deny elements of the parents' timeline. Community reaction has been raw and shifting. In the immediate aftermath, neighbors convened vigils, posted flyers, and shared emotional appeals online. Candlelight gatherings at the storefront where the mother reported the attack reflected empathy and fear. But as details emerged, investigators noting inconsistencies, officials removing a toddler from the home, and the father's prior conviction becoming public, the community's energy fractured. Some doubled down on support for the parents, insisting fair process matters. Others redirected their anger toward the father and the household. That polarization has produced harassment, threats, and emotionally raw exchanges that complicate the family's privacy and the investigation. For volunteer groups and child safety nonprofits, that polarization forced difficult choices about resource allocation and risk. For local newsrooms, it required careful reporting that balanced the public's demand for answers with the presumption of innocence. For investigators, the community's shifting tone is a reminder that while public pressure can surface leads, it can also contaminate scenes, intimidate witnesses, and create false tips that waste precious hours. As the investigation progressed, detectives increasingly treated the father as a central figure, not necessarily the sole suspect, but a person of major interest. That posture reflects three converging facts: the prior criminal record involving child cruelty, the forensic steps taken, including vehicle seizure, home searches, cadaver dogs, and subpoenas, and the family's reticence and inconsistent public statements. Those elements together change the investigative calculus. Detectives must exhaustively check the home and anyone who had access to Emanuel, map communications and movements in the hours and days around the disappearance, and re-interview witnesses and associates for discrepancies. It is critical to stress that being a central focus of an investigation is not a public declaration of guilt. Detectives are trying to answer a basic question: who had opportunity, motive, and access? Those answers require time, evidence, and careful legal procedures. The family's silence and public speculation will not substitute for shadow-free forensic work that will ultimately determine whether charges are justified. This is the hard part. A missing infant's fate is uncertain, public compassion has been mixed with suspicion, and a family's past and present actions are driving intense scrutiny. Hold these core takeaways in mind. Emanuel was reported missing on August 14th from a Yucaipa parking lot. Investigators found inconsistencies in the mother's account and have not ruled out foul play. The father's prior conviction for child cruelty is a significant contextual factor that affects investigative priorities and community trust. Authorities have seized a vehicle, executed search warrants at the family home, and used K-9 units, steps that reflect an evidence-first approach. When key witnesses stop speaking and outside groups withdraw, investigative momentum and community resources can shift, which may hinder rapid progress. Public help remains essential. If you saw anything on August 14th in the Yucaipa area, any vehicle, person, or camera footage near Big Five Sporting Goods, it could be the single piece of information investigators need. If you have a credible tip, contact the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Dispatch. Investigators are asking for trusted, direct leads rather than speculation on social media. The difference between a case that goes cold and a child being found can be one phone call. We will continue to follow this case closely and bring verified updates. Share this report with people who can help and keep pressure on the process so Emmanuel's name does not fade. What happened to a 7-month-old boy that night remains unanswered, and it is up to witnesses, investigators, and a vigilant public to insist on the truth.